Hi, Lisa Ran. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Kyrene?
I'm good too, thank you. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really glad that we're going to be having this discussion.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Good, good, good. So, Lisa Ran, let's just jump right into the conversation. When I usually get started on podcast episodes with a guest, I always ask the same question, really, because I'm really keen to get to know the person I'm talking to and understand their journey. So, Lisa Ran, if I was to say, who is Lisa Ran and what do you do? What would you say?
Mm. Well, my name, Lisa Ann, was given to me by my father, and he was very keen on being creative. He was a musician, and my mother was a singer, and that's how they met. So they came up with a creative way of spelling my name. And as a result of that, every time someone sees my name, they're like, that's a lovely way of spelling it. So who I am is a product of my mom and dad who have come together to be creative and want the best for me from day one. And as a result of that, I've been raised by a village from my paternal family, village from my maternal family. And looking back on my life now, I can see the part that everybody played in my life in helping me grow. So, for example, when my mom and I moved to a certain area, and my dad, obviously, I don't remember, I was really young at the time. We moved next to a lady who was a foster carer. And this foster carer became an adopted auntie because whenever I needed taking to school, if my parents needed to go to work or anything like that, she was right there and always supportive and there. And part of that journey was taking me on Sundays, where I'm sure my mum and dad were waving me off saying, see you later, to church. And she took me to church from when I was about 3 years old until the time I moved from that area to go to secondary school. And that became the fourth village, shall I say, that raised me. So who I am comes from Caribbean descent, living in the UK, and it's a mix of parents, maternal and paternal family. I would definitely say my auntie, who I live next door to, and the church that I attended.
Wow. Wow, that was so powerful. And just how you led with your name and where that came from is so interesting because actually even when I first saw your name, that's the first thing that I thought. I thought, what a beautiful name. Yeah, how do you pronounce that? So it's so interesting that very early on your parents had that intention to have something creative for you. Yeah, and really want the best for you. You also speak about the idea of a village and the village raising you and being really important to you. Would you say that's something that you've taken through to your adult life?
I would say yes. I'm thinking of the context of your question when you say it through to my adult life. Do you mean from me to others or in the way that I have that story that is part of my story?
In a way, I think I'm asking the question from you to others. And we'll come on to that just when I think about your social work journey, but just in the way in which when I look at your platform and when I think about some of the work that you do, community comes to mind straight away. And I wonder whether some of that came from your childhood experiences.
Absolutely. So when I was leaving secondary school, I completed a non-verbal test. I don't know whether you remember those back in the day. And the non-verbal test, I was put forward for that for three reasons. One, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I moved forward. Two, my confidence wasn't where it should be. So for me to apply for grammar schools and that sort of thing, I was very unsure of myself at that time. And three, it was going to give me some direction of where I could go. And using some of those results from the test, it's going to give me an idea of the kind of career choices I could make. I say that to say this. My career started in childcare and it started in a work placement at what is now called the University College Birmingham. But back then it was called Birmingham College of Food. And I started in a play scheme as my work experience and completed some silver service. Now, what you'll notice about both of those roles are linked to caring for others and providing some form of service. So that test revealed that whatever I was going to do, I was going to be of service to others. And that's something that was just inherent in me. I don't think that was something that was nurtured. I believe that's the gifts that God has given me to navigate through the world. And that began very early on. Now, I say that to say this. When I was moving home some years back, I found that test and I looked through it. Now, bear in mind, I am 11, 12 for secondary school. This is the time I took the test. And on that test, it said hotel management / restaurant work and social work
Wow.
and counselling.
Wow.
And when I made my decision to go into social work, I did not consult that assessment. That assessment was only consulted really when I was moving into the world and deciding what kind of work experience I wanted to have. So it was really based on, and it's very clear to me that it was inherent in me to be in the role that I'm in now and to have the mentality of being there for others and almost being a safe space for others to come to so they can get the support that they need. And I can say that with confidence because looking back on that test, which was taken before I was even a teenager, it was very clear that those skills existed at that time.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that. That is so interesting. And so then looking at your social work journey so far, what has that been like for you?
A broad question I'm going to attempt to summarize. I began green. I was unaware of some of the depths of how evil people could be. And I was unaware of how to navigate walking through my feelings around that. And I say that because, as I mentioned earlier, my confidence when I was younger is very, very different to what I am now. And so it should be. There should be growth. But some of that self-esteem that wasn't there to make those choices for myself of where I wanted to go. And I guess that isn't a big deal. Most children don't know what they want to do in life and what career they want to choose for definite. And I was clear at that time I wanted my decision to be right. However, it's important to note that the experiences that I had as a child growing up and moving into social work, I wasn't exposed to some of the things that I entered in social work. Most people aren't, right? So you have to, one, get used to the exposure to neglect on an everyday basis, possibly abuse from those that you work with on an everyday basis, and also the pressure of the job itself. The next thing I would say about my journey, and I'm going to put this alongside giving advice here. The relationship with the manager, I would say, is paramount because there's got to be trust between you. There's got to be some form of working relationship where there's a comfortability between you. And also there's got to be that support. And I think that support needs to be reciprocal between manager and employee. Where I started in social work, that's the kind of relationship that I had. And my journey started very well. Aside from having to learn how to navigate these new circumstances, these new emotions I'd never felt before, I had a manager that was there for me, that walked me through, that supported me, but most importantly, gave me the autonomy that I needed to grow and to learn and to find my way and my way of social work in. Now, I stepped out of that role after 2 years simply because of distance. It was a 2-hour drive there and back, so that's 4 hours out of the day. At the time, not saying it was right, but we were short-staffed. What's new? I had about 28 cases. I was managing them competently. I was happy there because I had the support system. The main reason why I moved was simply because of distance, and then they wanted to do roadworks, and I thought, yeah, that's it. I'm not adding another hour to all of this. Nah. And that's when I stepped into the world of agency work.
Hey.
And I remained agency for the remainder of my career. That was a complete different kettle of fish for so many different reasons, but I'll summarize them in three. One, when you move to different local authority areas, you are not necessarily going to be dealing with the same or similar issues in a different area. I'm only 2 years post-qual at that point, so my understanding of all of that is limited. And it was a wake-up call when I moved from working in the shires to working in the inner city. Completely different issues, completely different community vulnerabilities. And that was something that I had to adapt to pretty quickly. Number two, the autonomy was greater than the autonomy that I was given where I was before. And I thought I had a great amount of autonomy, but the level of care, and I guess what I'm referring to is the relationship with the managers, you have to build that again. And that takes time, and you have to find a space within you where you accept that that will take some time. And coming off the back of having a great relationship with not just my manager, but the deputy and the team, that took a moment. And I'd say thirdly was pace. When you move to different local authorities in different areas, the pace of the work is different. Alongside the pace comes the culture of the local authority that you're working in. So at every moment, you're having to adapt. So my social work journey simply became a place where I was learning and growing every step of the way, not just growing in practice, but also growing in myself and learning to be adaptable wherever I was placed. That increased my interpersonal skills, my communication skills, my intrapersonal skills as well. It's all part of that. And I think social work has been a mirror for me, constantly being held up, no matter where I was, no matter what case I was managing, and encouraging me to consistently grow.
Wow. Wow. There are loads of things that you mentioned there, Lisa Ram, but I think there's a few things that stick out for me really. And the first thing you mentioned about having to navigate new emotions and being exposed to new circumstances that you'd never been exposed to. And I think that is a really, really key thing, especially for new social workers that come into the profession. That can be really common. We all come from a variety of backgrounds. Some come into the profession due to their own lived experiences and wanting to create change. But actually, many of us come into the profession, not necessarily because of specific lived experiences, but because we have that inner passion to help and be a service to others. But what does come with that is having to navigate completely new circumstances. So along with trying to understand the processes, the culture of the local authority you're working in, you're actually also trying to navigate, how do I respond to this circumstance that really makes me feel really unwell, makes me feel sick, but I'm a lead professional. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to navigate, which I think can be underestimated.
Absolutely, absolutely, particularly in agency work. I mean, I've had some great places and I've had some not so great places. I've had great experiences and not so great experiences. It doesn't matter what side of the coin that I was navigating at that time. I was always having to learn something new and find a new way of moving forward and pressing forward and building that resilience.
Absolutely. And then the point you make around that relationship between you as a practitioner and a manager, I mean, I agree. And I think we know that is how key that relationship is to be able to foster growth and competence and confidence as a social worker. And I think it's always amazing when you have a positive early experience, because unfortunately we know that's not the experience of everybody. Because when you later have a not so positive experience, I think you then recognize the power of that initial experience that you had. So that really,
and it sets the standard. Sets the standard, and in essence, to a degree, that really set me up in creating boundaries with other managers that I came into contact with. It also set me up in terms of knowing what that standard was and not accepting anything less.
Yes.
And as a result of not accepting anything less came the conflict. Something new to learn there, Kyrene. How do we now navigate conflict with management, which is something that I haven't had to navigate before? I mean, over time, it became easier, and my no's are clearer. My no's are non-negotiable, and my no's are right where they should be because it feels right for me. That does not always fit in with the system and the organizational culture. So along my career, there have been those challenging and uncomfortable discussions and situations. But the bottom line is, for me, I will not accept anything less than what I deserve. And that's professionally and personally. And if I've got a good tolerance level, I'm self-aware enough to know, okay, you don't have to say anything immediately or right now. It's all about timing, and all of those elements come into play. Again, that's something I had to learn. And actually, we'll just name that. That's emotional intelligence, right? But I cannot express enough to anyone that's listening. Your no is where your power actually lies.
And setting that standard for yourself.
Setting the standard for yourself, nothing less. Excellence is the bare minimum. If we can't get to that, then we're not going to get on. And that's just what it is. I cannot be in a place where you feel it's okay to treat people less than. That's the number one way for me to go from 0 to 100 really fast, because I need to get an understanding of why you think it's okay to belittle someone with dyslexia or to shoot someone down because they don't agree with you. Let's have a conversation. I've had friends, social work friends, who had social workers who changed court statements. Social worker didn't agree, and social workers expected to sign the statement. That created a significant conflict. It's those scenarios such as that which don't sit well with me, and they never have done. But over time, I've used my voice more and more and more. And I'm looking forward to be able to share more of those stories as you know, as time goes by. But I think it's key at this juncture to just remind people that you must advocate for yourself. No one else is going to do that for you. And when you lay your head down on your pillow at night and you're feeling disrespected, you're feeling downtrodden, you're feeling as if you've really been taken advantage of, you're the one who's holding the space for that. And you walk with that space, and you practice with that space as well. So it's really important that when you have those feelings, somehow, some way, you've got to find a way to advocate for yourself.
And what it sounds like, Lisa-Anne, is through your social work career, through your experiences, you developed that confidence, you developed those skills to be able to use your voice. Then, and I wonder, because what then took you into the role of coaching? Because I'm very much aware that you had your own varied social work career and then decided to take a route into coaching. And I wondered what led you down that path.
So it's a really good question, And the moment never leaves me. I'm on the phone to my friend, I won't name her, and I was just saying, I'm so stressed. I've got no time for myself. I'm exhausted, and I'm fed up of social working. And most times we would talk, it's the same conversation. You've been there, Kyrene. There's always a period of time where it's like, oh my God, right? As I've mentioned before, you're on a roller coaster and you get to the peak of that roller coaster. And as you're traveling up, you're traveling very slow and taking in the scenery, and you get to the peak and you're looking around and you're like, okay, what have I done? And you can't get off the roller coaster. You have to sit there. It has to go down, and it goes down at speed, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what I was feeling like. And one day she said to me, you know something, will you just shut up? Now, obviously, I'm gaining confidence now. So
Yes.
I was like, excuse me? What? Excuse me? I've heard you speak about this time and time again. Why don't you do something about it?
Oh.
That's the first time I'd ever been challenged about my mindset, about how I was feeling and where I was in life or in my career. And I said, well, what do you mean? What can I do about it? And she said, well, do some life coaching, study to be a counselor, try something new, help support young people, get out of the social work, local authority arena, just do something else. You've got the skills, you've got the qualifications, you know what you're doing, just go. I remember going to bed that night and I was so confused because I'd never been in a place where I wasn't sure about what I was planning to do. So even though, and this talks to the duality in which you can be walking in, AKA surviving when you're in your career. Because I thought, well, I do enjoy the job. There's just parts I don't enjoy. And there isn't any choice. I've studied to do this. I'm good at what I do. And there's parts of it I enjoy. Why would I think of doing something else? It was an alien concept. And I want to bring in here cultural and familial influences here. I come from a family, like we all do. I come from a family of workers. And my background is Caribbean. And when my family came over here, they chose a career and they worked that career until their time came. And that's just what it is. Now, if you become an accountant and you knock Nan's door, you're like, you know something, I'm going to become a counselor. Oh, Jesus, you must stick to the job. Yeah. And she'll, you know, it's not that I was going to say, it's not that she's not open to it. No, she's not open to it. But as time progressed, you know, she will be open to discussing it, but she will be extremely skeptical. Mm-hmm. She'd be like, Lisa, but you have a good job and you go to university and, you know, all these kind of things that she's, you know, I know, Nan, but no, Nan, she ain't trying to hear it. So what I'm saying is that you've got that mindset, right? That mindset of coming from a poor background where they went to school with no shoes, even though they went to private school, they had to go, the sacrifice was no shoes, you have your pencil and you have a paper and you go on a school and you come back and you get your education. Now, I know there's a lot of history behind that mentality in terms of Black culture. I won't delve into that. However, I'm just explaining the lineage in which I've come from. And that lineage is simply, okay, we've made it from the Caribbean over here. I've worked my fingers to the bone and stuck to the same career year in, year out, whether I liked it or not. So you and the generations beyond will have a better life. So don't come here and tell me after you go to university, you want to change job. That doesn't make sense. So I say that to say this. My mother has a similar mentality. And she studied, she did what she had to do, she stuck to the same career. Now, she really enjoys it. We have this conversation all the time. She enjoys it. She loves it. My dad was the same, stuck to the same career as a musician, enjoys it and loves it. They're fine, they're happy, and that's okay, right? So they're not in a place of where I was, where I just thought because of the influences and my experiences, that was all there was going to be for me. So that was the turning point of me thinking about becoming a coach. I didn't act on it at the time, though. I went back to work and continued the cycle of complaining and continued that until I reached burnout. And that's when things changed.
Wow. Wow. So with all of that in mind, it didn't feel strong enough for you to be able to act at that time. It still took for you to get to a point of burnout, which, you know, we often try to avoid and try to tell fellow social workers to avoid, for you to feel that actually it was now the right time.
Yes. And that comes to what we know in social work as the cycle of change, right?
Absolutely.
Only the seed had been planted in me. I needed to water that seed and have some form of visualization of what life could look like becoming a coach, right? But that story didn't come without conflict. So once I'd made the decision, I decided for the first time I was going to step away from social work entirely. And it was a massive decision because it was within 2 weeks of me being promoted to senior prac. Within 8 weeks of that, my mum was rushed into hospital with 2 brain aneurysms, and I became a full-time carer. Business went down, no coaching clients, no coach, no nothing. So it didn't come without its adversity. Then I had to go back into social work because, of course, I was in a place where I just started a business. Yes, it was doing okay, but that's not a business I could continue whilst I became a full-time carer. So I had to go back to work, and I left social work on 2 more occasions. I have career breaks for the benefit of A, writing books, and B, attempting to build my coaching business. That slowly morphed and changed. I would say that the significant change, I was always coaching social workers along the way, but the significant change came when COVID hit. And BASWA decided that they were going to open up a support service for social workers because of the challenges that they were experiencing being out there on the front line during COVID. And I'm talking about before the lockdown and during and after. They were like, social workers need something. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of trauma that they were experiencing. So they opened up the service called the Professional Support Service. And the advert came round saying, you know, if you would like to offer peer support to social workers at this time, or if indeed you are a coach, please apply. So I applied and I was successful. So since the inception of that service with BASWA, I've been a part of that service as a coach, offering that support to social workers as and when they need it. You just book in whenever you want to via the website. Shortly after I was accepted on that, I was sent by my clinical coach, I was sent a job to become a leadership development coach with Frontline. Now, that came as a result of George Floyd's murder. They recognized that their coaching pool was not as diverse as it could/should be, and they opened up 4 roles for Black, Asian, and ethnic groups to apply. And I was successful. So within a very short period of time, I say with a period of, say, I don't know, 6 months, I was then working directly as a coach with social workers.
Wow.
And that's how the journey really flourished from then. And when I work BASWA, you choose your own times when you are available for people to contact you as a coach. So I have a time that people can do that. Frontline, this is the amazing thing about Frontline. They were very flexible. And this allowed me to provide coaching during my lunch hours while I was social working. Yes. So whilst I was a social worker and whilst I was a team manager. And I never forget getting a call one day from a lovely lady who deals with accounts. And she said, Lisa-Ann, you haven't put in an invoice for 6 months. Do you want to go through your dates that you carried out these sessions? Oh, wow. I think that'd be a really good idea. And she just said to me, I just actually don't know how you do this. I don't know how you have a full-time job in social work, knowing how busy it is and how unpredictable the times could be. And you're providing 2 to 3 coaching sessions in your lunch hour a week. It's like, I take my hat off to you. I don't know how you do it. And I would say back, I don't know how to do that either. But what I realized is what I should have said was thank you. Because it's a reflection of what happened in that test all those years ago. I was designed and built for the purpose of giving some form of service and support in whichever way that come, whether that's silver service, hotel management, or of course what I'm doing now. And it was an indication to me that I was absolutely and positively walking in my purpose.
Doing exactly what you were supposed to do.
That was it. Even though it wasn't a conscious thought that I was going to apply for Frontline so I could do coaching in my lunch hours, I had no idea how it was going to work. I was just like, I'm qualified, I've studied, I've got the experience, I'm a social worker. That's my job, right?
Yeah,
How it was going to pan out, me no know, Kyrene, me no know. I had no idea. And it spawned into me using my lunch hours, because it came to the point where they say, coaching is for the social worker to access during work hours, because they want them to prioritize themselves in work hours, not outside. So that's where I was like, okay, so what time do I have? And that's how I started doing it in my lunch hours. So shout out to all my coachees.
It's amazing, amazing. And I mean, when it comes to coaching, I personally, I love coaching, and I think that it's such a powerful tool that all social workers should be able to access. But I don't know what your thoughts are, Lisa Ram, but I feel that it's quite a relatively new concept for social workers. Well, when I say so, less experienced social workers, because early on in my career, I always would think that coaching was something for senior managers, or something that senior managers were able to access to kind of elevate their careers. But I'm now seeing, and I think actually with you mentioning COVID, that is potentially the period of time where I've seen social workers new coming into the profession, going through the ladder now, starting to access it. So I find that really interesting. And I don't know whether you'd agree that it's a relatively new concept for social workers.
I think with that question, we have to take a step back for a moment and think about, well, where did coaching begin, and where is the bridge between coaching and social work?
Yeah.
Now, there's some research going back to the 1980s which links coaching and social work together. But what didn't happen at that time is leveraging that research to integrate that into practice. What happened instead, as you rightly pointed out, is over time, coaching was something that senior managers accessed, and it was for them only. And that will be titled leadership development, or leaders training, or coaching for leaders. That immediately created a gulf between the managers and us as social workers. So immediately, the messages being sent is that coaching is simply for leaders and managers. So that in itself and inadvertently created a space where we felt we couldn't access that. So why would we ask about it? Why would we be curious about it? So we haven't got even the mindset to be open to it, because the message is being sent when you get those training emails coming through saying, book yourself for this training, look at all this lovely stuff. And the stuff that you want to do is for the managers. It's like, okay, well, let's just move on. And because we're constantly in crisis intervention, I would say you just forget about it, actually, because there's more important things to do, better fish to fry, because you've got children and families to be there for. So you're not going to be hankering after that. So I think some of this is around the messaging, the dilution of that original message back in the 1980s, and then the change in that message being towards senior managers and coaching. Oh, I do agree with you that the change began to happen when BASWA made an offer for social workers to access it. And I think this is where the language of what coaching is about and how it could best serve you started to really take shape. So I was pleased that they were able to offer that. Now, prior to that BASWA offer, I would speak about this in the local authorities I was working with. Absolutely no interest whatsoever. Zero. Oh, good for you. Basically, as long as that doesn't interfere with your work, good for you, right? And at that time, it was like, what is a life coach anyway? What can you, and then the judgments come and all of that sort of stuff. So the language around it was very loose. The regulation around it also was considered very loose. Anyone that is not a qualified coach could call themselves a coach, right? That is still the case now. And that's why people decide to be accredited. I'm not sure I believe in that process for the purpose of respect. For me, if I've studied to be a coach, I'm actively coaching and have been, and we're getting testimonials and getting those reviews. I'm comfortable in my space. But for some people, they feel that that's what they want to do. And for some jobs, that is necessary. And that's fine. So coming back to coaching in social work, and BASWA's flag to say, hey, we have an understanding that this works. Yeah. We have an understanding that if we offer this to you, this is going to be a form of support that's going to help you. And next to that, what you have in the background is Frontline, the Frontline charity. All of their programs, everyone has access to a coach. Mm-hmm. And that has been ongoing before BASWA. So it's clear that someone somewhere had the vision of bridging the gap between coaching and social work and made active attempts to make that happen. And that's still ongoing now, and it still continues for Frontline and other companies. So now we've got companies that are coaching just for social workers, that are going in and doing this organizational help with restructuring, etc., using coaching. There is still a reluctance and a misunderstanding about what it can offer. And I think that's something we have to work on through messaging, through meeting people, networking, having those conversations. But certainly I'm having more conversations now more than ever with local authorities who are interested and curious about how it can support them and their teams. What I would say to anyone listening to this, particularly if you're in a management position, but even if you're not, you can be advocating for this. Reach out to me to have a conversation. Not everything can be put on the website and be put on social media. I'm much better having a conversation. I know for a fact, Kyrene, that what I'm saying to you now is not something that you've seen on my social media profile.
So helpful.
And I know that's why you're like, that's so interesting, because you haven't seen it before, right? So what that's telling you is you get way more from me as a person when you speak to me. Social media for me is a shop front. I'm not a massive fan. I'm simply there for the purpose of showing you what I can offer and trying to give you an insight into the person that I am. But I always struggle with that on social media personally, because of that. I know if you speak to me, I know I could describe this and say this in a completely different way. That's personable, that's engaging, that's interactive. So yeah, don't judge me on social media, guys. But yeah,
you're great on social media, Lisa. But it's just having that interaction is just always different, isn't it?
Always different. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I would definitely encourage people to do. If you're curious about it, just like how does this work? How could this work for my team? Reach out to me, have a discussion. Of course, there are other coaches out there by all means. But if you're listening to me, why wouldn't you want to reach out to me? That's what I'd say.
Absolutely. And as you just said, Lisa, and coaching is very personal. So having those conversations about how it could help individual social workers and their teams is important. But I don't know, I wondered what your thoughts were on generally, how can social workers use coaching to develop their skills?
It's such a wide question because it depends on the reason for accessing the coaching. Right. So I've had people come to me and said, well, I've just been told to access the coaching. They don't know what it is, don't know how it can help them, don't know what they want from it. Right. I've just been told. So you have those group of people. You have a group of people who are experiencing trauma. Coaching may not be the best space for it. It may be that counseling/therapy is the best space for it. And lastly, I would say some people are aware of what coaching can offer. They understand what it can do for them in their practice or personal development, and they leverage that space. Now, to answer your question, I think I'm going to answer it in giving two examples here. First of all, personal development and personal growth. Just as the term life coach is like, well, what does that mean? How big is that? That's so wide. That's actually what coaching can offer, right? You can come and speak about any aspect of your life and gain some clarity around that. create some goals that you want to achieve and be kept accountable to those goals, whilst understanding the cognitive processes that are happening as a result of the decisions you're making or the decision you want to make. Now, with that being said, there also has to be an understanding that we're not trauma therapists.
Yes.
And we often are faced, particularly in BASWA, because they usually access that service as a result of really needing the service. And usually those that come through, they wait until the last minute to find some support. So by the time they they've experienced this trauma, right? So there has to be an understanding of exactly what coaching is. And I'm going to share that with you now, just to give you an outline, but I do want to make clear it can deal with any aspect of life. And there are many types of coaches. You'll have someone who may call themselves a life coach. I'm a qualified performance coach with NLP. And that's, again, another element of coaching. You can have a business coach. You can have a health coach, right? You can have, these are different types of coaches. So you may qualify as a life coach, as a performance coach, and you actually streamline what you'd like to focus on. You could have a coach that's just for new moms, navigating the emotional challenges of new moms. You can have a coach that is a stylist coach, right, for fashion, right, and helping you choose, well, why have you chosen this color today? What does this color represent for you? How are you feeling? What are the emotional connections there, right? So you can have a coach for all different areas of your life, and you can find a coach for that specific area of your life. There is a rumor or a myth going around, which I think there's likely some truth to it, that Oprah has about 8 different coaches. And I would definitely advocate that if you can afford it, because coaching is not cheap.
Yes.
And that's something that I definitely want to bring into this conversation. But yeah, if you think about it, she could have a health coach. She could have a personal trainer. She could have a life coach, which is helping her with her thoughts. She could have a coach which is just focused on her inner child. Yeah. We could have a nutrition coach, which works with the health coach together to create the best service for her. Right. So that is possible. Now, coaching, as I mentioned earlier, is not counseling. It is not therapy. It is not mentoring. Coaching is a space where you are considered an equal and a partner, and you are having conversations. Those conversations have a structure to it, and that structure begins with, what would you like to achieve out of this particular session? Or if you're running a coaching programs like I do, what would you like to achieve at the end of this coaching program?
Yes.
And my role is to facilitate the coachee to reach and find their own solutions by asking specific questions or using coaching exercises. Now, the difference, for example, with a mentor is the mentor is a person who has, or is considered, to be the expert. And the mentee follows the guidance, advice, and support of the mentor. And it's an expectation that the mentor gives some answers to some questions.
Yes.
But in a coaching session, I often get some of my coachees, particularly my private clients, because we have more raw kind of conversation. They'll be like, can you please tell me what you think?
Yes.
No, sir, that's not what you paid me for. You didn't pay me for an opinion. You paid me to help you find your solution and to help you grow in confidence in that decision that you've made, to be comfortable with that decision that you've made. You haven't paid me to offer my opinion. Now, I must admit, and this is why we all need clinical coaches, as a social worker born and bred, it's easy to give advice.
Yes.
So sometimes in a session, I'm like, oh, hold on, let me ask you the question before I'm saying something, right? So we do laugh about that with my clients sometimes, but that is the essence of coaching. The essence of coaching is a questioning framework that's going to help you get to the place where you want to go and get to the decisions and the solutions that best suit you. And we facilitate that process and provide a support to help you get to that space.
Wow. And what I would say, I mean, as I said, I've accessed coaching, and just I don't think I thought about it too much until you've just said it, Lisa Ram, but I really think coaching as well is brilliant for social workers who are kind of coming into that leadership space or management space. Because I remember one of my first ever coaching sessions, I came, this is my problem. And then the coach was asking me questions. And I thought,
Why?
yeah, I'm here for, can you tell me what to do here, please? And she didn't. But what that really did for me is developed my, even though it wasn't about that, it developed my management style, because actually I quickly realized I'm answering too many questions. I'm solving problems for the social workers in my team. But actually, it helped me to develop a style where I was encouraging social workers in my team to come to their own solutions. Whilst that's not necessarily what I went into coaching for, it helped me in that aspect of my career as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I found so powerful about it. And as a social worker, initially it's uncomfortable because
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'm only coming to you because I don't know the answer to this.
Right. So why are you asking me?
Are you? Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
it's only when you just said that I thought, it just reminded me of that experience because it can be so powerful.
And those aha moments are
Yeah,
what I live for. I live for the moment, and you can see, and I saw the glint in your eye when I was talking there. I live for that moment, that aha moment. And I live for the moment when someone does this in the coaching session.
mm.
I'm like, I always go, welcome to coaching. Because now you're thinking of something you have never thought of before. And that is the power of asking those powerful questions. It's creating new brain neurons for you to be thinking outside of yourself and giving you that aha moment and that realization of growth or revelation or whatever it may be for you.
Yes. And Lisa Ran, you touched on finance when it comes to coaching. And, some individuals, some social workers are very lucky to work in local authorities or in businesses who will support with the funding of coaching, and I've been lucky enough to have that experience in previous employment as well. That's not every social worker's experience. And we know
Your
coaching,
coach's experience either, Kyrene.
exactly that, yes. And we know anything that is of value comes with a cost, absolutely. But I guess I'm just thinking my question within this, but why should social workers prioritize coaching if that's something that they've got to pay for independently?
That's a really good question. I love that question. Got me thinking. I've never thought of it in that way because I guess I think from a perspective of I know it's going to benefit you, but actually getting behind why it's going to benefit you is a really good question. I would say it's an independent space, independent of your employer. And what I get from every coaching session, whether it's BASWA, Frontline, or my private clients, I'm so glad I have this space where I feel safe to say anything and there's no repercussions. You can't buy that kind of space. And this is why I take so seriously what I do, because I'm holding this space for all of these different social workers and coaches. I'm holding an emotional space, a vulnerable, sensitive, confidential space. They're trusting me with their innermost feelings and thoughts, whether it's professional related or personal related. And to have a space where you feel you are heard, seen, valued, challenged, understood, stretched. You can't buy being in a space that offers you that. That doesn't have a price, because what you get from a coaching session is going to last you forever. It's not just for that moment in time. An aha moment is a forever moment.
Yeah.
So if you realize that, I had a coaching session the other day where actually the coachee realized through the questions I was asking, they were not where they thought they were, and they were not emotionally where they thought they were. And that created that moment, right? It was like, oh, okay, what's going on here? And we started making connections about how she was feeling, where she was, where she'd come from, where she wants to be. And what really came out of that discussion is they just actually were not where they, it just completely confused her in some ways. Like, I've actually been wearing a mask all this time, thinking I've been managing things, but actually my resilience is not what I thought it was. My confidence is not what I thought it was. And I'm certainly not emotionally where I thought I was. Actually, I'm just kind of creaming off the top of this coffee and I'm living off the froth of a coffee rather than actually taking in what's going on underneath, the flavor and the time it takes to roast it and actually brew it. She was living off this froth. And this is what I was going to say, this is what the coffee can offer you. The coffee can offer you that, but this is what a coaching session can offer you, right? Longevity in having that understanding of self. It's priceless. And this is why I champion coaching, because if you're pouring into you, if you have a space that is for you to help you with either your mental health or to help you grow, help you reach your goals, whatever the reason is you step into that coaching arena, whatever you learn in that sessions, programs, is going to last you forever, and it will no doubt have a positive impact on your practice. Now, you may be asking or thinking, well, how and why? Well, if let's use the example of wearing a mask, let's say this mask that you're wearing is actually covering up exactly what you're feeling, and what you're actually feeling, in quotes, is coming from a place of fear, right? You're working from that place. So the decisions that you're making are rooted and centered back to perhaps an experience or a trauma, or perhaps a narrative that's been created as a result of that very real experience. And the lens in which you see things is through the lens of fear, but you think it's something else.
Yes, absolutely.
Until you break that down, until you enter a coaching arena, you're continuing just to have the froth of this coffee. And whilst that might taste good, it might look good, and it's got all those bubbles in, and it has a nice feeling and a different texture to it, the real juice of it all, you're not even getting to the best part of you when you live from that space.
Absolutely. And I also think, Lisa-Ran, you cannot replicate the feeling after a coaching session.
Yes.
Shoulders are
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Honestly, and I would always say, honestly, my experience has consistently been that I would perform my best after a session. My mindset was a little bit different. And not to say, and I think that's why consistency is important, because yes, I'd feel that way for a few days, and then the realities of work and life and everything would take over. But knowing that actually I've got another session coming up in a couple of weeks, or what did my coach tell me? Let me work on those strategies to maintain how I'm feeling, is incredibly powerful. So, everything you just said there, I completely agree. Whilst expensive, is valuable and has a strong impact on every aspect of your life, honestly.
I mean, let's talk about the price of coaching briefly. Yeah, you mentioned there it's expensive, and you saw my eye movements when you started talking about money, right? Because it's interesting to me. I find it fascinating that there is an expectation that you offer coaching for free, or you offer coaching at, say, £20 per hour. Now, some coaches may choose to do that, and that's absolutely fine. Everyone can set their own prices. It's fine. No two builders are going to set the same price, right? So the same principle remains. You've got the autonomy to do that. I personally wouldn't do that, because I know when you step into a coaching session with me, you're going to have an aha moment. You're going to have whatever you've learned that's going to last you for a lifetime. And all of my wisdom, studies, skill, experience, and understanding, I'm 100% giving that to you.
Yeah.
That's not £20. That's not £50. That's not even £100. That almost, you can argue, doesn't have a price, because it could actually change the whole trajectory of your life, your career, how you feel about yourself, the confidence that you may have after a coaching session, all those things. You can't put money on that. So I set my price and I stick to it, because I know the value that I can offer. And the place in which, and I can share this with you actually, Someone said, you know something, I've had a couple of coaching sessions with you, and it's brought back so much revelation. It's been so insightful, all this great stuff. I'd like to continue coaching with you. Could you send me a proposal? Proposal is sent. And what came back is, when I was hoping I would get all of that for, you know, £250 as a coaching program. I'm sorry. And I can say that with grace, and I can say that without attitude. What I'm offering you and what you're going to get from it is not actually linked to money at all. And this is where you get into the thing about mindset around money. So you might go out there and buy iPhone, desktop, Mac. I mean, this particular person who really, really wanted to move things forward, because there was some things she discovered in coaching she wanted to kind of flesh out and kind of feel like there was a conclusion to it all. I decided to go on holiday. And you want to ask me to lower my prices so you get the maximum from me and from the sessions. Coaching, I believe, is invaluable, but you have to put a price on it because it's a business, right? But you have to respect coaches' prices and your mindset. If you're thinking, oh, that's way too expensive, there's some coaches out there that don't work for less than £500 an hour.
Yeah.
Especially in the corporate world. There's some coaches that don't work less than £250 an hour. My prices are set according to what I believe they should be. And that's just the bottom line. And those the coachees that come through my program, they are the most dedicated and most committed to the process. They do all the homeworks. They do all of the extra bits that I ask them to do. They keep themselves accountable throughout. They maximize that session. And some of that, I think, is linked to the mindset around money, because they know that if they pay this money, they are going to get something invaluable from the session that's going to last them forever. So they absolutely maximize it. And I'm just shout out to anyone who's watching this. There's one of my private clients. I'm bigging you up because you give your all every single time. But that means to me there's synergy, because I'm giving you my all and you're showing up for yourself. So not spending that money is going to keep you where you are. Spending that money, just like buying the iMac or the desktop or going on holiday, is going to upgrade you, enhance you, make something better for you. It's simply about, what do you put more value on?
Wow. I mean, Lisa Ann, I think I could have this conversation for a couple more hours, to be honest with you. It's been mind-blowing, honestly. But if social workers do want to know more, Lisa Ann, about what you do, the work you offer, inquire with you, where can they find you?
So I'm on all socials. TikTok at Social Work Coaching Hub, YouTube at Social Work Coaching Hub. I'm going to be launching YouTube formally very soon. At the moment, you can just access the podcast there, but click to subscribe. I'm also on LinkedIn, my name, Lisa Ann Edwards. My website is socialworkcoachinghub.com. And if you go to socialworkcoachinghub.com, there you will be able to see what I offer from coaching, events, workshops. Also, I have my podcast. Please subscribe to that on Spotify, Apple, and all platforms. It's called Dear Social Worker, Let's Talk. When you visit my website, you can have access to free downloads to three main documents. One is exploring your attachment style, which is focused on adult attachment and how that links to self-care. Second, you have a personal growth one. As you've heard throughout, I have a passion about personal growth. I think if you pour into yourself personally, you're going to show up professionally in a way like never before. And thirdly, self-care versus self-abandonment, which is from a podcast episode, which looks at the difference between self-care and self-abandonment. They're completely free. I have a course that you can access also, which is based on adult attachment. Go straight to the website, which will take you through to the Social Work Coaching Hub, where all the resources are there. And I forgot, I'm on Instagram.
Yes.
At Dear Social Worker Podcast. Now, Instagram is like my side piece. It's like my boo. Instagram's like my boo. And LinkedIn, I would say, is my main squeeze. So if you really want to find out the real, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on there all the time. Instagram is my boo. I'm still on Instagram. There we go.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'll make sure I capture all of those places that people can find you in the description box as well.
Right.
So the last question I have for you, Lisa Ann, is a question I ask everybody who comes on this podcast. And that is, what does social work leadership mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's from the premise that everybody is a leader. And I put a post out about this earlier this week on Instagram. If you are a family support worker, you're a leader. If you're a student social worker, you're considered a leader. If you're a social worker, you're considered a leader. And if you have the title manager, you are a leader. In social work, that means you are leading a group of people, group of professionals to create the best possible plan and outcome and interventions for children and families. In order to do that, you need to have a vision for that family, and all leaders have a vision. All leaders have an outcome in mind. And your role is to be able to lead professionals and lead children and families to that outcome. Now, you've got to get people to get on this train with you to follow this CP plan through, to follow this SIM plan through. And that includes parents, that includes the family, the extended family. They've got to get on that train with you. How do you get them on that train?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can't get them on that train by just saying, come on, the train's arrived now, on you get. They're going to ask you, well, why do I need to get on the train? Where is this train going? And when am I going to get there? As a leader, you will have the answer to all of those questions, no matter what role you play. And that's what makes a leader. You are going to be leading from the front in the first instance, because you've got to get people onto the train. I would say for the rest of that journey, you need to be sat at the back of that train, watching it go forward and being there to say, oh, be careful of that, and spotting all of the different obstacles and challenges that may be coming up along that train ride. And also being there to direct people, if needs be, to keep them on the train and keep them safe. That is what social work leadership is.
Thank you so much, Lisa Ann. Lisa Ann, it's been an absolute pleasure. Honestly, when I mean this from the bottom of my heart, when I say I think you're truly inspirational. Just hearing your journey here today has been an absolute pleasure. I've followed you on socials for a long time, initially on LinkedIn, onto Instagram. But just having this conversation here today, you know, I just feel that I know you so much better. I'm understanding aspects of your why, what brought you here. And yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Kyrene. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.